Leonardo Vasquez had once carved towers into the skyline of an entire city, his name on blueprints, contracts and glass facades that caught the morning sun. Now at 79, he woke up every day in room 507 of a private senior residence that smelled of disinfectant and quiet regret. The bed was king-sized, the armchair Italian leather, the curtains heavy silk, imported from somewhere he'd once flown to on a private jet. But none of it mattered. His two sons had signed the forms, kissed him on the forehead like a formality, and disappeared from his life, as if he were an old contract finally resolved. Each morning, sunlight slipped through the bulletproof windows and crawled up the walls, but Leo only turned his face to the blank ceiling. Breakfast arrived on a silver tray he rarely touched. The nurses tried to coax him downstairs for activities and socialization, but he had no interest in pretending this place was anything but a beautiful waiting room for people no one wanted at home. He shuffled between the bed, the bathroom, and the armchair by the window, watching strangers' lives move on far below. Cars, strollers, couples arguing, teenagers laughing. Somewhere out there, his sons were spending the dividends of his lifetime, having sold off pieces of his empire behind his back, tucking him away in luxury so the guilt would hurt less. They solved the problem, Leo thought bitterly. They solved it by erasing him. But while Leonardo Vasquez drifted through his lonely mornings inside that polished room, miles away, another life was cracking under the weight of survival. Rosa Almeida woke before dawn in a cramped, single-room apartment that held its breath with her. The ceiling leaked when it rained, the wallpaper peeled in thin curls, and the mattress she shared with her daughter Luna sagged in the middle like a tired spine. Rosa was only 32, yet her body ached as if it had lived twice that. Years of scrubbing floors, lifting trash bags, mopping endless corridors, years of choosing between paying rent and buying medicine for her sick mother had carved exhaustion into her bones. "Mother, are you leaving already?" Luna whispered, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Not yet, meu amor," Rosa murmured, smoothing her daughter's curls. "Sleep a little more." But Luna's presence could not soften the truth. The world was heavy, and Rosa carried all of it alone. Her mother, once fierce and strong, now lay in a hospital bed across the city, drifting in and out of pain. Every night after work, Rosa sat beside her, pretending not to hear the apologies. "I'm sorry you have to do this, Filha. I'm sorry I became a burden." Rosa always answered the same. "You're not a burden. You're my mother. But even love has limits when the bills keep growing." At 6 sharp, Rosa pulled on the faded uniform of the cleaning staff contracted to the senior residence, the same residence where Leonardo lived like a forgotten monument. She tied her hair back, kissed Luna's forehead, and whispered the promise she wasn't sure she believed anymore. One day things will get better. Then she stepped into the cold morning air, carrying her worries, her hopes, and the quiet courage of someone who has no choice but to keep going. Rosa had warned Luna to stay in the tiny storage room near the staff entrance, but children were not made for stillness, especially not children like Luna, whose curiosity sparkled brighter than the morning sun. After half an hour of drawing in her worn notebook, she peeked into the hallway. Voices drifted somewhere far off, the soft hum of wheelchairs, the smell of polished wood. Just a little look, she told herself. Her small feet carried her down the long corridor of the Bellevue residence, its marble floors gleaming under pale lights. She passed framed paintings, tidy plants, and elderly residents dozing before muted televisions. Luna didn't stare at the luxury. She stared at the faces, the tilt of loneliness, the quiet sighs, the way some eyes searched for something that never came. Then she saw him. Leonardo Vasquez sat alone near a wide window overlooking the busy street below. His posture was straight, but his eyes, they looked like something had collapsed inside them long ago. His untouched cup of tea had gone cold beside him. He didn't notice her at first. Adults rarely did. But Luna noticed the sadness curled around him like fog. She stepped closer, holding the only snack she had saved from home, a single red apple. It was small, slightly bruised, but bright in her tiny hand. "Hi," she whispered. Leonardo blinked, startled. He wasn't used to anyone approaching, much less a little girl with paint on her fingers and a soft, fearless gaze. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, tilting her head. He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Luna didn't wait. She lifted the apple toward him like an offering. "My mother gives me fruit when I'm sad," she said. "It helps." Something fragile cracked inside Leonardo's chest. No pity. No obligation. Just a simple act of kindness from a child who knew nothing about his broken empire or the sons who had erased him. For the first time in months, he felt seen. Leonardo stared at the apple in his hand long after Luna had settled cross-legged beside his chair, as if she belonged there, as if loneliness were something she could chase away simply by showing up. The fruit's skin shone a deep, impossible red too bright for the muted palette of his life. He cleared his throat. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Luna replied, already flipping open her notebook. Her crayons were broken, their wrappers peeled, but she used them with a careful tenderness that reminded him of architects sketching their first blueprints. "Do you want to see?" She held up a drawing. A house with a big garden. A sun that took up half the page, and 3 people smiling under its warmth. "This is my dream home," she explained proudly. "One day me and my mother and my grandma will live there." The simplicity pierced him deeper than any boardroom betrayal ever had. He had built skyscrapers, hotels, towers of glass, yet none of them had ever contained the kind of hope Luna carried so effortlessly in her small hands. "Do you have dreams, Senor?" she asked suddenly. Leonardo pressed his lips together. It had been years, decades, since anyone had cared enough to ask. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. "That's okay," Luna said, nudging his knee gently. "You can make new ones." Her voice was soft, but the conviction in it startled him. This child whose life was defined by scarcity spoke of possibility as if it were air. She drew another line, then another humming under her breath, and something began to shift. The next day, Leonardo found himself waiting, pretending he wasn't for her small footsteps. When she appeared, hair tied in a crooked bow, he felt a faint warmth unfurl through his chest. She sat where she always did, close, but not intrusive, and talked about school, about her mother's tired smile, about the grandmother she prayed would get better. Leonardo listened, really listened, and the silence inside him loosened. By the 3rd visit, he found himself responding short sentences at first, then longer ones. Luna celebrated every word like a victory. "You talked more today," she cheered, clapping her hands. Her laughter filled spaces inside him he thought were permanently sealed. He began eating again at first, just the apples she brought, then actual meals. He walked downstairs, sat among residents he once avoided, answered when spoken to. The staff whispered about the change, but no one understood the source. Only Leonardo knew. It wasn't the medicine, or the sunlight, or the polished comforts of Bellevue residence. It was a 5-year-old girl with a bruised apple and a heart big enough to reach the places he thought were already dead. And with every smile she drew out of him, he felt the impossible truth taking shape. She was teaching him how to live again. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet transformation inside Leonardo grew roots. It was slow, almost invisible at first, an extra bite of breakfast, a longer walk down the hallway, a small but unmistakable spark in his eyes. Yet to him, the change felt seismic. Luna didn't heal him with miracles. She healed him with presence, with honesty, with questions he didn't know how to answer, but somehow needed to hear. And then one afternoon, as she skipped toward him with a drawing fluttering in her hand, Something unexpected stirred inside him, a feeling he thought had vanished forever: indignation. Not bitterness, not despair, something fiercer, something alive. Grandpa Leo Luna beamed, collapsing onto the floor beside him. "Look, I drew us smiling today." He studied the sketch, two figures by a window, sun pouring down on them. He hardly recognized the man in the drawing. Not because it wasn't accurate, but because it was true. He was smiling, and in that fragile smile, Leonardo saw something he had been avoiding for months. His sons had taken everything from him: his company, his autonomy, his dignity. They had signed documents behind his back, shifted assets, cut him out of the very empire he'd built brick by brick. They had abandoned him in a gilded cage and expected him to fade quietly, politely, like a problem solved. But Luna's presence had cracked open a part of him that refused to die. That night, in the calm glow of his room, Leonardo asked the receptionist for the phone. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from purpose. He dialed the number he knew by heart. "Dr. Montes," he said, when the familiar voice answered. "It's Leonardo. I need your help." A stunned silence followed. "Leonardo. My God. I haven't heard from you in months. Are you all right?" "No," he replied honestly. "But I will be." He explained everything: the forged signatures, the unauthorized sales, the betrayal disguised as concern. Dr. Montes did not interrupt. When Leonardo finished, the lawyer exhaled deeply. "This is serious," he said, "but it's not too late. If you want to fight this, we can." Leonardo looked toward the window where Luna had left her drawing propped against the lamp. The smiling version of himself watched him back quietly, urging, quietly believing. "I want my life returned to me," Leonardo said, "and I want justice." For the first time in a long time, he felt his spine straighten. He wasn't a burden. He wasn't forgotten. He was a man reclaiming what was stolen, and it had all begun with a child's apple and a stubborn little smile. The investigation unfolded quietly. At first, paper trails, signatures, transactions that bore Leonardo's name, but not his hand. Dr. Montes worked tirelessly gathering documents, statements, and digital footprints. Each new discovery was a blow Leonardo felt not in his mind, but in his ribs, like grief settling where breath used to be. Fraud, forgery, diversion of funds. His sons had built an entire architecture of betrayal, one more calculated than he had ever imagined. And yet now that he was awake, now that Luna's small kindness had pulled him back into the world, he refused to collapse under the weight of it. The day of the hearing arrived with a cold morning sun. Residents and staff noticed the difference in him as he stepped out of his room wearing a clean suit and steady posture. He looked less like an abandoned man and more like someone reclaiming himself stitch by stitch. When he entered the courthouse, Caden and Theo, once the boys who held his hands crossing streets, glared at him as if he were the one who had betrayed them. Dad Caden hissed under his breath. "Why are you doing this?" Leonardo met his gaze with a calm he had earned the hard way. "Because I won't be buried alive," he said softly. Theo scoffed. "You're old. You don't understand how the business works anymore." Leonardo swallowed the ache. Age doesn't erase ownership or dignity. The judge called order. The proceeding stretched for hours. Evidence presented, signatures compared, account transfers displayed on screens that reflected cold, undeniable truth. Caden and Theo's confidence crumbled piece by piece, and when the verdict finally landed, it was like a quiet thunder. Control restored. Contracts annulled. Authority returned to Leonardo. His sons removed from their positions indefinitely. Theo muttered, "This isn't over." But Leonardo only closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling years of swallowed hurt. It was over for him, for the part of his life defined by silence and surrender. When he returned to Bellevue residence that evening, exhausted but strangely light, a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. "Grandpa Leo." Luna barreled toward him, tiny arms wrapping around his waist before he could kneel. "You look different," she said, studying his face. He smiled an honest, unshielded smile. "I feel different Did you fix the problem you were worried about? He brushed a hand over her hair. Yes. And it's because you reminded me I still mattered. Luna beamed as if she had known the ending all along. And in that golden hallway with the evening sun warming the walls, Leonardo realized something profound. Justice had been necessary. But healing had begun long before that, on the day a little girl handed him a bruised apple and refused to let him disappear. In the days that followed the court ruling, Leonardo felt a strange clarity settling into him, like fog finally lifting from a landscape he had long forgotten. Justice had steadied him, but it was gratitude that moved him. Gratitude for a little girl who had seen him when no one else dared to look. Gratitude for her mother, Rosa, who worked silently in the background carrying burdens that would have crushed anyone less resilient. He saw her one afternoon pushing her cart of cleaning supplies down the hallway. Shoulders slightly slumped, uniform worn thin at the elbows. She paused to greet an elderly woman, her voice gentle, despite the fatigue etched into her face. Rosa never complained, never expected anything. She simply endured because she had a daughter who believed the world was still fixable. That night, while Luna's drawing lay on his bedside table, Leonardo made a decision. "Montes," he said over the phone, "I need your help again. This time, for someone who deserves far more than life has given her." Rosa would never accept charity. She carried her pride the same way she carried her mop, firmly without wavering. So Leonardo instructed Montes to design it differently. A new employment program, a staff development initiative, anything that sounded official and impersonal. Rosa's name at the top of the approval list, her salary increased, her contract made, permanent benefits included. And her mother, Leonardo asked softly. "We can enroll her in a hospital assistance program," Montes replied. Quietly. "Do it," Leonardo said. "Make sure they never know it came from me." Weeks later, Rosa was called into the administrator's office. She walked out with trembling hands, eyes bright with disbelief. A signed contract, a better salary, a future she had stopped dreaming about. And then another call. The hospital. Her mother approved for a treatment program she could never have afforded. When she picked up Luna from the staff lounge that day, she couldn't stop smiling. "Mother, what happened?" Luna asked, skipping beside her. "Blessings," Rosa whispered. "Many blessings." Later, as Luna ran to greet Leonardo, waving a new drawing in the air, Rosa lingered behind. She watched the old man kneel to meet the little girl's hug, saw the tenderness in his eyes, an affection that expected nothing back. "Thank you for being kind to her," Rosa said quietly when Luna ran ahead. Leonardo shook his head. "It's she who has been kind to me." Rosa smiled, tired, grateful, genuine. Somehow, without knowing the truth, she understood it anyway. And as Luna tugged at Leonardo's sleeve, laughing about some new idea, he felt something settle in his heart. A sense of belonging, not bought by wealth, not granted by family, but given freely by two people who had nothing to offer, except love, and that he realized was everything. In the months that followed, Bellevue residence felt less like a quiet waiting room for forgotten lives, and more like a place where second chances breathed freely. The air seemed lighter. Laughter traveled farther. Even the walls, once sterile and cold, felt warmed by the rhythm of small miracles. And Leonardo, once a man fading behind his own memories, walked through the halls with a steadiness that surprised even him. He wasn't healed all at once. Healing rarely happens like that. It came in gentle waves, a shared joke at the domino table, a morning coffee enjoyed instead of endured, a simple joy in waking up and knowing someone somewhere was thinking of him. One Saturday afternoon, as the sun spilled gold across the floor, Luna burst into the common room wearing a backpack covered in stickers and the crooked keychain he'd made for her. "Grandpa Leo," she cried, "look, I made us a new drawing." She handed him a page of brilliant colors. Two figures, him and her, standing not by a window this time, but in the middle of the garden outside, surrounded by flowers, surrounded by life. "It's us," she said proudly. "Not sad anymore." Leonardo swallowed hard. "No," he whispered, voice thick. "Not sad anymore." Rosa watched from the doorway, her mother recovering at home, her job secure, her daughter glowing with joy, and she understood again what she had felt from the beginning. They had saved each other. Sometimes the world breaks us in ways we don't see coming, through betrayal, exhaustion, or the silence of people who should have stayed. But healing often arrives quietly disguised as kindness. A smile, a small act, a child offering a bruised apple to someone who thought life was already over. The smallest compassion can resurrect the parts of us we believed were gone forever. And sometimes you are that compassion for someone else. Before you go, if this story touched a place in your heart today, tell me in the comments what part spoke to you the most. I read every single message, and if you believe more people deserve stories like this, leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need a little light today. Because maybe, just maybe, you were meant to hear this right now.